Dream Theater is my favorite band, and years ago, I made a tier list ranking their albums before their latest album came out. As is prone to happen to people who get older and mature more, my opinions have somewhat changed. But don't tell anybody. So today I'm gonna be ranking the Dream Theater albums in another tier list, because I think the time is due. And my band Crusade is doing a mini tour through Florida, January 5th through January 8th. We have stops in Tampa, Orlando, and Jacksonville. Update while I was editing this, we added a date in Daytona on the 7th. Check the link in the description for details. We would absolutely love to see you there. Come to the show, enjoy some metal, buy some merch. Come say hi to us. We love saying hi to fans. Again, that is Florida, January 5th through January 8th. We got Tampa, Jacksonville, and Orlando. Check link for description. Let's get into it. All right, today's categories are Masterpiece, Great Album, Good, There's Better, and Meh. These are named by the person who actually made the tier list themselves. Say I put this guy here and then this guy here. I like this one less than I like this one. That's how I'm ordering them today. This should be a surprise to no one. I'm putting When Day and Dream Unite in the Meh category. As a piece of Dream Theater history, I appreciate it as their first release. Truly, in context of most other bands in the rest of their catalog, it just feels like a demo. The production quality also feels like a demo. I wouldn't call it a straight up bad album, but I would not really consider it a good album, honestly. Also in the meh category is Falling Into Infinity. Up to this point, it is arguably the album with the best production, though Images and Words arguably could be thought of as better in some ways, depending upon how you grade production. It barely doesn't go into the there's better category for me, just because I never need to hear any songs off of this album again. If it wasn't a part of the Dream Theater catalog, I wouldn't miss it. Arguably some of the most scattershot, random, trying out some new styles in a way that really didn't work out of any other album they've released. The story goes that this is the first album that they worked with like a mainstream record label, and they had a producer from that label in there, and it seems like they were making a lot of compromises, trying new things that weren't necessarily in their wheelhouse. I can applaud them for trying. I'm so happy they shut that shit down afterwards. It makes complete sense why they would give it a shot. They gave it an honest shot. They said no. My reaction is the same. No. I'm happy they learned from that experience. In the There's Better category, Self-Titled. The Enemy Inside, I freaking love that track. I still come back to it regularly. The rest of the songs are mostly forgettable to me. I do like The Bigger Picture a little bit, but holy cow. If you want to talk about like what really displays the overproduction on some of the drums on the album, The Bigger Picture, that snare is just insanely gated. There's just some weird way that they're exaggerating the top end of it, which is fine, but then it's just that's just so overly gated. I do love the impact of a lot of the drums, but they also just feel very fake. And I think that's one of the reasons why so many people don't like Mangini on the drums and say he feels like a machine. It's not his fault. It's just how they produced that one. Besides the drums, the rest of the mix is pretty decent. I like it, but yeah, there's just no exciting writing on there for me. Starting off the good category, Black Clouds and Silver Linings. I have grown to appreciate this album more since the last tier list we did, and even realizing that there's a song on here that I love. The Count of Tuscany for the solos alone gets a plus sign for me, just damn. Though I rarely find myself having the patience to make it through the entire album. Just the opener of the album itself, A Nightmare to Remember, I immediately get kind of on it. Has a bunch of cool moments, but very rarely is there a full song where I'm like really taken with it. Has some really good production though, gotta say. Next up is their latest album, A View from the Top of the World. This is arguably some of their cleanest and biggest production to date. I really appreciate that. You can tell they went all out. They did try some new things, and I appreciate that to a degree, but for the most part, it felt a little by the numbers to me. It still feels way safer than Awake, Images and Words, Scenes from a Memory, 6 Degrees of Inner Turbulence, Train of Thought, Octavarium, Systematic, like all of those feel like much more dangerous going outside of our comfort zone choices than A View from the Top of the World. Maybe this album will grow on me more as the years pass, but for right now, I'm not in love with it. Next up in the good category, we have Distance Over Time, the second latest release. I do not love every track on this album, but there are a number of tracks I still come back to every once in a while, especially that riff from At Wit's End. Ugh, so freaking tasty. And I didn't put 2 and 2 together until recently, but that riff from At Wit's End is very reminiscent from the test that stumped them all off of 6 Degrees of Inner Turbulence. The production on this album felt like a modern version of the production that we got on Awake. Very roomy, a little bit high mids, grady, some depth, a different kind of depth than what we got off of Awake because of the technology differences. But there's almost like a scooped-ish nature to it, just a little bit. If I remember correctly, they wrote the album in a couple weeks, which is nuts to think about considering the complexity of a Dream Theater composition. This is the most real they've felt in a while, and it was super cool to hear them just kind of let loose and be a little bit more raw, a little more unpolished than what they typically do. This album still has a charm for me. Next up, 6 Degrees of Inner Turbulence. I was hoping this album would grow on me more, and honestly, it hasn't. Most of disc 1, I really don't care for very much, except for Misunderstood. That song is amazing. Hands down my favorite off the album. That song is huge. It's a journey. It's the angst of someone who is admired by a bunch of people, and it's really cool. The second half of the album flows so much better. This is the most I've heard them try to approach a Pink Floyd type of thing, both from a lyrics and story perspective and from a handful of the writing decisions. This album is very drenched and Rush, and that's probably one of the reasons why I don't love it. Hey, no hate on Rush. I just don't fall in love with Rush the way other people do. I will say though, songs like Solitary Shell, as cheesy and like uplifting as the whole vibe of the song is, there's a lot of really good hooks in the song, man. I mean, you can say it's cheesy and it's bleh, it's too on the nose for me and too bleh, like Get Laid or something. Like, okay, fine. If that's the way you feel about it, totally get it. But there's some really good melody writing in that song and in a number of other tracks as well. Disappear is kind of cool. I just realized I like that song more now than I used to. And the production on this album is fine. I used to like it more when I was younger, and now that I've gotten older, I'm like, it's still very good, but it's just not exciting. It's not very exciting. And last on the good tier is Train of Thought. For some people, this is a great album. For others, this is a masterpiece. I completely understand that. It doesn't speak to me as an entire listening through experience very much. I can get people loving it without a doubt. I wouldn't blame you if that's how you feel about it. It just doesn't fully do that for me. This is arguably the most new metal-y Dream Theater album out there. For American metalheads that really aren't into prog, this would probably be a decent entry point for you. As I Am's a pretty damn cool track, I gotta say. And man, I've been waiting to use this clip forever. My ass and balls. I've had that clip on hand for like a year and I keep forgetting to use it. The production on this is very aggressive and kick you in the face, and I really love that about it. But the songwriting of any of the other tracks has never really connected for me. Like, it's an enjoyable enough listen. It doesn't feel too random, even though it's called Train of Thought, which makes you think like stream of consciousness, which is kind of random and not connected well. I still feel more fulfilled and engaged listening to this than I would 6 Degrees of Inner Turbulence, honestly. And I can tell this for me is more of a taste thing than a quality thing, if that makes any sense. First up in the great category, Awake. The more I come back to Awake, the more I learn to appreciate it. However, I must say, the first half of the album is really good, super engaging. They had more catchy melodies and fun chord progressions and voice leading than I realized. But then you get to the second half and you're like, And considering how neatly tied together images and words was and how polished the production was, it was really cool to get something so raw from Dream Theater, and it just felt very organic. It's one of the most organic albums I've heard from them. And every fucking time I get to the chorus of "I caught in the web," like, it's just so much. It's so over the top. It's hilarious and awesome. I'm all about it. Hanging on by a thread. It's just so much. I can't do it justice. I can't. But just like open your mouth and your throat as wide as possible and just fucking project, and it's that moment. Voices is a pretty damn cool track off of there. Erotomania is one of my favorite Dream Theater songs. I absolutely love the riff in the beginning of Mirror, and then the rest of the track kind of falls apart for me as it goes along, and then the rest of the album kind of falls apart for me a little bit as it goes along. Still, an absolutely fantastic album. Here's a controversial take. The Astonishing. With the exception of a handful of songs, I thoroughly enjoyed disc 1 of this album. It is very good. I know this album is polarizing for so many different fans. I did not love disc 2. There's parts of disc 2 I thoroughly enjoy. Frickin' Path That Divides is either my favorite or one of my favorite songs off of that album. So good. But they were trying something very different in their approach to album creation. And I think maybe with a little more guidance and a little more time, they probably could have made one of the best fucking prog albums ever with this thing. Like, there was the potential there. And they brought in an outside orchestra, an outside orchestrator to supplement the entire album, which I thought was an awesome choice. It added a depth and gravitas that I feel like many prior albums wanted to achieve and never quite fully got there. That one got there for me. I still love listening to that. The mix on that album is very good, all things considered. Some of the best melody writing in that too. Some of the best vocal performances by James LaBrie. He is all over the place as far as expression and timbre on that record. And that's not when he's at his best, which I think is even more admirable. I mean, I'm not trying to shit on James, just saying, getting up there in years, your voice gets beat up, you know, you're not at the peak of your game at that point in time. It's just biology. And having said all that, he still does a fantastic job on that record. That says even more to me. This is arguably one of the cheesiest albums, maybe the cheesiest. Don't care. I don't even care. I mean, I'd fully embrace it. Just like, give me the delicious cheese. Give me all. If they could have really nailed the story, I feel like that was a big thing for a lot of people. That was a huge letdown. Normally, story is not a big thing for me on albums at all, even though a lot of people love story. For me as a consumer, don't really care that much. And it matters more on this album because it is so obvious. That's how they marketed it. The thing came with a libretto that explains to you what's supposed to be happening while this interlude music is going on and the dialogue is happening and what characters are saying what. It was extremely story driven. It's a massive gamble, especially for high fantasy. And they didn't stick the landing, in my opinion. Even with its flaws, I still love this album. I find a place in my heart to love this album, frankly. And next up, we got Octavarium. Man, this is so close to being a masterpiece for me. It is like this fucking close. The reason why it doesn't go to masterpiece for me is because it's an 8-track album, and I usually skip 3 of the tracks. I couldn't give a rat's ass about The Answer Lies Within. Sorry, I love you guys, but I just couldn't give a shit about that song. Same with These Walls. I'm checked out. Don't give a shit. Again, maybe a controversial opinion. I love the song I Walk Beside You, even though it is very clearly a pastiche of CCM, American Christian music. Panic Attack is arguably one of the best songs Dream Theater has ever written. That song destroys. Love it. Never Enough, kind of cool, kind of like a XXX soundtrack type of vibe in bits of it. Some good melodies. Sacrifice Sons is it seems like a bit of a lull in the album that I get pacing wise why you want to give people a breather, That is really fucking long. And then we get to Octavarium, and Octavarium's fucking outstanding. And I just critiquing Sacrifice Sons for being too long. Octavarium's like, what, 24 fucking minutes? Absolutely obnoxious. Still love it. Probably my favorite Dream Theater song, arguably. It's either Octavarium or On the Backs of Angels. Those are the two in contention. So it's got like a ton of tracks that I really, really, really like, but I still skip 3 fucking songs. But undeniably, great album. All right, this is about to get controversial too. Scenes from a Memory is not in the top 3. Some people consider this to be Dream Theater's greatest achievement. I saw them play this album in its entirety live, front to back, with the whole fucking projector of like, oh, like this is the thing that's happening. The person's going back in time and there's a lady and she dies, or I don't know what the fuck happens. I don't care about the story. I really don't give a shit. There isn't one song I come back to on this album. The front to back listening experience is very good, undeniably, but I don't love any songs on here. It's just a cool album. It gets a rank this high mostly because the performances and the writing are things that were groundbreaking for the time, and I know it's an extraordinarily influential album. I just don't love it. I just really don't. It's not bad in the fucking least. I just don't get why everyone is obsessed with it. Or like Dance of Eternity. I get that it's a lot of time signature changes. Ooh, scary. It's extremely impressive. I never want to listen to that song. It was badass seeing them play it live. It was astounding. It was incredibly impressive seeing them play it live. It was nuts. It was like, holy shit. But then I thought to myself, I can get the exact same thing in my headphones. It didn't have that element of danger as much as, say, jazz or fusion or jam band stuff has. There's more of an element of organicness. It's very impressive what they did, but I'm like, it was cool to see that they did do it. I never need to see them do it again. And I really like, I'm not gonna be able to recite you anything from that song. I don't get it. Systematic fucking Chaos, underrated album. Another 8-track album from Dream Theater. I only skip one song on here, usually, and it's Repentance, though I can usually be okay with listening to it straight through uncut as well. It took me a while to admit to myself that I love multiple songs on here and that I come back to them far more often than most other Dream Theater albums. I really like this album a lot, and I think it doesn't quite get enough love. In the Presence of Enemies, parts 1 and 2 bookend the album and are massive opuses that just destroy. In the Ministry of Lost Souls is one of my favorite fucking Dream Theater songs. It has arguably the best outro ever written. Prophets of War is just a Muse clone, but it's still a lot of fun. Forsaken, single off the album, I think might even be a little overrated, but you could tell that they were like trying to go for the hit song thing. It's still a great song. I still really enjoy it. The only thing that is imperfect, in my opinion, is the production. It does seem a little harsh at points, but it's not bad. I think it was just a stylistic choice. And I think it matches the character of the songwriting and how dark and pissed off most of the songs are on that album. So that's more of a thing that I noticed and less of a critique, if that makes any sense. A dramatic turn of events. This is my favorite album, but I can objectively say it is not their best album. This is the album that I fell in love with. It is my favorite. On the Backs of Angels is an absolute domination of a song, just fucking annihilates. So good. So many well-written melodies, so mean, beautifully changes pace and goes in and out of several different moods so fucking cleanly. I think it is a masterclass in metal and prog composition. As far as accessibility too, is far more accessible than people realize. You can show that song to a normie and they'll really like it. I promise you. I'm willing to put fucking money on it. This is an album I can listen to front to back and not skip anything. I truly enjoy every song on this album. I will pick out each song on this album and come to it individually, as well as the incredibly well-paced album experience. The production on this album is not as good as I remember. It has its weak points. It's not perfect. Still thoroughly enjoyable. Some incredibly well-written and memorable melodies. If I had to pick a worst song on that album, honestly, I'd say Lost Not Forgotten, and I still love that song. There's some great moments on it. I think you could maybe trim it up a hair for sure. But yeah, even the worst track on that album, I still fucking love. It's so fun. And last but certainly not least, Images and Words. Arguably a perfect album. I'm not exaggerating. You can say that you hate it. That's perfectly okay. There's lots of people who hate perfect things. I don't remember the last time I skipped a song on this album. Every time I listen through, it is a full listen through. It is the experience front to back. So many fucking well-written songs, so groundbreaking for the time. This thing changed prog and changed metal and changed progressive metal forever. And for, was it 1992? This production was excellent for this genre, untouched for this genre. And honestly, for what they had, it still stands up today. I mean, yeah, is it packed with cheese? Absolutely packed with cheese. Double quarter pounder, double up on the cheese, like absolutely. I still feel things when I listen to this album, still to this day. This is one of my favorite albums, and I hate saying it because it seems like such the insert progressive metalhead opinion here take, but like really, it's fucking good, man. Anyway, so this is my new ranking of Dream Theater albums. Let's see what my old one was. Okay, it's pretty similar. Pretty similar. I'm pretty consistent, all things considered. Here's the two side by side so you can compare. There you go. All right, let me know how you rank the albums in the comments down below. Mwah. Catch you guys later. Come see us in Florida, January 5th, January 8th. Details down below. Catch you later, people.